Hi, my name is Mike, and I work in product marketing here at Email Signature, and I'm going to be your host today. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Today's presentation is being recorded, and a copy will be sent out after today's session. Also, all attendee lines are muted, and that's just to cut down on background noise. But I want this to be as interactive as possible, so please use the chat interface provided in the meeting software. And I will try to get to questions during the course of the presentation, but if not, we'll definitely make time at the end of today's presentation. Okay, now that we got that stuff out of the way, let's jump into today's 20-minute workshop, Managing Email Signatures at Colleges and Universities. Let's take a quick look at the agenda. We've got a compact schedule that we're going to cover in about 20 minutes today. We're going to walk through and talk about why there's such a brand challenge in higher ed today with regards to email signatures. And with all the technology at our disposal, why is this still a challenge? We're also going to talk about some of the best practices for creating, sharing, and managing email signatures across university staff, an area that while there is a ton of guidance out there, there's still a quote-unquote last mile problem with regards to execution. And we'll also talk about what to look for as you evaluate your options offering an approach to this challenge. So a lot of times when I start the conversation around the email signature block as a branding tool, I think most of the people think of the examples on screen now. Horrible signatures, with all due respect to whose signatures they are. Horrible signatures littered with lots of mismatched colors and fonts and weights. There's even some pictures of cats. You'd be surprised what we see here at email signature in companies' email signatures, and even non-relevant quotes from historical figures. And the truth be told, this is true for a lot of commercial companies, in addition to being true for colleges and universities. Too often, organizations just don't enforce control over how their brands are conveyed. So why is this still an issue? I'm guessing for many of you on today's call, and that's probably the reason you're on the presentation today, is you don't dispute that this is a challenge. But for the uninitiated, I'll run you through it real quick. Just as they are for commercial companies like Apple, Intel, Ford, and Nestle, a university's brand is its single most valuable asset. The key to developing and maintaining a brand's promise is consistency, and that goes without saying. That is the number one requirement for any brand to be developed, is consistency. So having non-standard email signatures is incredibly dilutive to that brand, and it's obviously wildly inconsistent, which does not allow you to support that brand. So email signatures having non-standard footers and statements and even logos, that essentially becomes a death by 1,000 cuts for a brand. And just as competitive as those companies that I named before are, universities are just as, or even more so, competitive. Also, compliance is at play. Many public institutions are required to notify recipients of compliance requirements associated with information being sent via email. Going back to the brand for a second, it's important to remember that for colleges and universities, practically anyone receiving an email from a college or university could be a customer. Students, alumni, grant providers, employers, every one of those people should be met with a professional presentation of the university brand. So all that being said, there are lots of great, and really the word I should use is tremendous, examples of universities going the extra mile to provide prescriptive guidance to their users on the school standards for email signatures. As you can see, I've shared 4 great examples of schools setting the standards and communicating them effectively to their users. I just picked 4, but could have easily shared 400. In fact, many schools that I kind of just randomly picked provide this type of guidance. So, webcast is over, right? That's all a school has to do is provide some guidance like this on their site and they're done? Unfortunately, no. So if the schools are already doing this, why is this still a problem? Well, the one thing I didn't mention about these examples was that there's a lot of end user involvement in the process. So this is that last mile problem I talked about before. Every one of those examples and some additional ones I'm showing on screen had some component that required their end users to copy and paste, or worse, follow a multi-step process to deploy their own email signature. And I think you can see where this is going. Yes, it needs to be this simple. The truth of the matter is that university staff is already overtaxed with class and administrative loads and burdens, And unfortunately, the email signature block doesn't rank as high on their list of to-dos as the brand builders of the university would like it to be. This isn't a technology problem. Trust me. I can tell you from a place of expertise that the technology truly exists. I can speak to that for hours. It's really an adoption problem. It's that last mile, that term again, getting the signatures deployed and managed on an ongoing basis. That's really the challenge that we're facing here. And we're going to talk about how to tackle that in just a second. But let's talk about, first of all, getting your house in order first with some best practices for email signatures in the college and university setting. Whenever I have this type of conversation with both commercial organizations and universities and colleges, I typically break it down into three kind of categories or sections with regards to email signature management: creating the signatures, sharing the signatures, and then managing them. For creating, from a best practice perspective, I don't think it's rocket science, really. In fact, a couple of the examples I just shared a few slides ago broke it down really well. Stay away from mismatch or non-standard fonts. Avoid extraneous historical or philosophical quotes as little add-ons at the end. That is, unless Gandhi or Einstein actually went to your university, then go ahead and go for it. Another best practice is to, where possible and where suitable, is to grow your community, be it the university community, be it the department community, or even at the major level. If that's appropriate for your particular institution, then I suggest you do it as a best practice. And we touched on this earlier, but if you're required to adhere to any compliance statements, then go ahead and make those standard. Keep it legal. And last but not least, and again, this kind of goes into the if it's suitable kind of category, add a call to action to your signatures. Even if it's just to check out the university website, you want to drive action with your signature where you can. You've got a trusted audience in the recipient of your email, and if there's a particular initiative that you really want, to help drive, then update your email signature and try and drive that behavior. When it comes to sharing, we're really getting into addressing the biggest challenge with email signatures, and that's what I mentioned before: deployment and adoption. So I would focus on the outward-facing departments first, like admissions or placement, alumni. Those are just some examples. And then move down the list. Most importantly, you need to lower the bar to entry. In fact, you just need to get rid of it. If you can do it for your users, then you must do it for the users. That's probably the golden rule you need to follow. And I'm here to tell you that you can do it for them. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Also, when it comes to sharing signatures, it might be a good idea to leave some room for end users to edit some of their info, like a mobile phone number or their own personal Twitter account. This will aid in that adoption and usage if they feel like they're involved in the process at some level or degree. As for managing, I'll just say it very bluntly and very clearly. The communications team, so those administrative communication teams at universities and colleges, you need to own this deployment and management of the signatures. You're the university brand cops. This is your best opportunity to ensure the brand is protected and communicated in the exact same way, and the best way for that matter. A best practice, I should say, for managing this effort is also to lessen the burden in IT. University IT is already busy fighting fires and trying to protect the university's information from the next security breach. They don't want to deal with this, trust me. And you really don't want to try and put this on their plate when they've got other, bigger scale projects. So, a best practice would be to try and lessen the burden on IT. You'll also definitely want to measure the effectiveness of signatures and maybe even consider alternatives or add-ons for certain initiatives. So this is what we talked about before, adding a call to action, from a management perspective. I definitely think that this is something that you should look into as kind of going above and beyond just, the brand standard issue. As I said, the technology totally exists to make all of this happen. It'd be really easy for me just to kind of stop the webcast now and put up a start a free trial page, direct you over to emailsignature.com. But, in terms of us trying to make this a workshop, I'd rather help you buy than try and sell you. So let's talk a little bit about what to look for in a vendor. So as I mentioned before, the technology truly does exist to manage this on a wide scale. You just need to know what looking for when you start, investigating the technologies out there for email signature management. I think you want the ability, and for all the reasons we talked about today, you want the ability to centralize all the work that goes into email signature management. the creation, the sharing, and of course the management. Having this all in one place and managed by a single person or team is key to success. So you want to look for vendors with a single interface or kind of in a single experience that takes them through this entire workflow. You also want a solution that has a low or no end user burden for adoption. So no more cut and paste, no more 9-step processes. Like I said before, if you can do it for them, then you must do it for them. And a very good vendor, or a very good solution in this space, I should say, is going to allow you to do it for your end users. As I mentioned before, we just got done talking about it, is you also want a solution that won't require heavy IT involvement. So when you start requesting hardware or software assistance, that's where projects die. And I can tell you that on the commercial side, that's no more true than on the commercial side, but it's definitely true within colleges and universities as well. So lessen the burden in IT. Probably a lot of what you are thinking right now on the call is, thinking about maybe moving to the cloud. And that's probably a really strong option for you at this point. And also an interesting one, the kind of the last bullet, I think what you should look for in a vendor, you want the ability to grow, right? So you want to be able to grow beyond the signature block, to add in those statements, or, dare I use the word campaigns, for certain school initiatives, either, back to school, or, maybe a new bookstore is opening, or there's a new class schedule available. You want to be able to add these into your email signature with ease and on a wide one-to-many basis. To really capitalize on whatever that initiative might be. So this quick workshop, what do we talk about today? Let's do a quick wrap up and then we'll get to the questions. And as a reminder, please feel free to enter in any questions in the chat interface and I'll get to those shortly. I apologize. I do see a couple in there already. I didn't look over enough during the presentation, so I apologize. So what do we talk about today? Obviously, university brands are just as valuable as consumer brands and need to be cared for all the same. Guidelines alone are not enough. The last mile proves to be the failure point. So you can put up, and I shared some great pages from some really proactive communications departments at various colleges and universities. But, at the end of the day, adoption is going to be low if you don't really do it for them. And that kind of goes into the next point, which is the barrier to adoption doesn't need to be lowered. It needs to be blown out of there altogether. And then lastly, the centralized approach doesn't always mean IT has to be involved. It can be done centrally with a really low IT overhead. Okay, I think we're doing really good on time. While I go and collect the questions real quick, I just wanted to put up a slide with my contact info, as well as our URL and our Twitter handle. If you're interested in learning more about our Email Signature 365 product and how it allows colleges and universities, as well as commercial enterprises, to manage email signatures centrally, then please visit emailsignature.com and feel free to start a 14-day free trial. And if you have any questions specifically about our product or company, you can email me. My email address is right there on screen. And let's go ahead and go to the questions. The first question comes from Hillary. How can you get 3,000 school staff to deploy the signatures without the same guidelines that you shared being followed? It's a good question, Hillary, and by no stretch of the imagination am I saying that you don't need those guidelines. I think those guidelines are an incredibly important piece of, really dictating what the brand standards are and need to be at a college or university. Really what I'm advocating for is a centralized deployment and management perspective. So how can you get a staff of 3,000 to deploy the signatures? You do it for them. You choose a vendor and a solution that allows you to push out these signatures to your end users so they don't have to do anything. Hillary, if that doesn't necessarily answer your question, definitely please feel free to email me. I can actually talk to you specifically, and I use this word lightly, technically, how it happens. But really, I think my high-level answer is you do it centrally and you do it for them. The next question comes from Ramon. Can you give some examples of the initiatives that you can support with email signatures? Yeah, great question. So we talked a little bit, and I used the word, campaigns, not to intimidate anybody. But with certain vendors, email signature obviously being one of them, we allow for you to add on them very simple compliance statements. If you wanted to add on a certain initiative, notice for an initiative. So I'll give you some examples. Notices on class schedule changes, new classes being offered, or maybe the admission office has got new hours. These are all things that you can add in a time-based fashion to your email signature that can run for any predetermined amount of time to really kind of highlight a certain goings on at the university. Be it, like I said, new admissions hours. Maybe there's going to be a pep rally for the football team. Maybe you've got a visiting scholar on site, and they're going to be doing a presentation that's open to the entire school. You might want to promote that via your email signatures. Looks like actually the next two questions come from Steven. The first question is, does your company support Office 365? So specifically about email signature, I can't speak for the other vendors, but yes, we do support working with Office 365. I know that that's a very popular email infrastructure approach at colleges and universities. And yes, we can integrate our signature management with Office 365. Steven has the next question. Our university is moving from on-premise Exchange to Office 365, hence this question. Does your solution work with either or both of these? So I'm guessing I got your second question last. Sorry about that, Stephen. Yes, we work with both on-premise Exchange as well as hosted Exchange. So we can actually work with you concurrently, Stephen, during your migration from on-site to hosted, and we wouldn't miss a beat. This next question comes from an unnamed attendee. Does your solution require all users to be on the domain? Really good question. And I know this is kind of a big challenge with colleges, universities that's got some areas are being upgraded with regards to infrastructure before others. Actually, no. Our cloud offering does not require end users to be on the domain. We actually have created a separate syncing mechanism that is available so that even if your users are non-domain users, as long as they're on the same email infrastructure, they can receive and have their signature synced. And it looks like the last question is just a very simple one. Pricing, question mark. Again, I can't speak to other vendors in this space, but email signature, we bill per user and we bill annually. We don't charge for, admin accounts or setup fees. Our cloud offering is pretty straightforward. The number of users that you want to deploy signatures for, and we bill on that number annually as a subscription. And I should mention, considering the audience today, we do offer educational discounts. So definitely feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about that. Well, thank you all for those questions. That's it for the questions. I appreciate everyone who took the time to attend today. And again, I do appreciate all those who took the time to ask a question. Once again, my name is Mike from Email Signature, and I just want to say thanks to everybody for attending. And I hope to hear from you all soon. Thanks, and have a great day.